Hi, my name is Sam Mendes and I'm the director of American Beauty.
And my name is Alan Ball and I'm the writer.
And welcome to this simultaneous commentary track on the DVD. I love these things. I've spent the last year learning by listening to other people waffle the way through movies, and now I get my chance, so forgive us if we're too boring. This shot is all that remains of one of the original openings of the movie. There were actually, I discovered 3 openings when we put it all together in the cutting room. The first was a kind of prologue in which the kids were found guilty of Lester's murder, which was paid off at the end. And we decided to excise that in the last week of editing it in the cutting room, and it changed the whole nature of the film. And the second opening, as it were, was a flying sequence featuring Lester Burnham flying through the air and arriving in front of his own house. And then it turns out to be a dream. And this shot that you see now was the plate shot that we shot from the helicopter, over which Lester's flying frame was supposed to be superimposed. And we spent 2 days on a blue screen with Kevin Spacey doing this. And then when I put it together, it looked in itself very beautiful, but it felt like the opening to a different movie. It felt whimsical and almost like the opening to a movie by Coen Brothers or something, which I would love, but was inappropriate for the tone of this film. And this was him waking up, but he'd actually flown down into the centre of the frame, and his sleeping figure was going to be superimposed over that. And I recut this whole sequence, probably more than the rest of the movie put together, the first 10 minutes of the film, to get the tone exactly right, to make it clear that it was a boring day, but to do it in a way that wasn't boring. Here's a shot of Lester in the first of a series of jail cells, really. The movie, if anything, is about imprisonment and escape from imprisonment. It's a rites of passage story. And he is constantly seen early on in the movie. I think Alan wrote this almost subconsciously in a series of jail cells, you know, in the shower cubicle and the cubicle at work, in cars. A series of images of Lester trapped behind glass and the kids trapped behind glass and moving within frames. And this was something I wanted to bring out in the film. And you'll see one in a minute, in fact, of Kevin. There he is, just trapped behind in his little jail cell. But here was a setting up of a series of characters in a way that the movie kind of takes them apart gradually, peels back layer after layer of each character. And in a way I wanted to set up the standard figures, almost the stock figures at the beginning of the movie. And so the voiceover operates as an introduction to the main characters. But also, of course, the voiceover is a throwback to something like Sunset Boulevard, which is narrated by a dead character, a dead man. And there's something so wonderfully lonely about the voice that hovers over the film. It seems to be the ultimate spiritual extension of the loneliness that is present in much of the movie. And again, a series of images, this is the first of them, of characters studying reflections of themselves, reflections in mirrors, reflections of their constantly changing shapes and ages, reflections in mirrors, reflections in panes of glass. And here's Lester delaying Carolyn. This is a scene we put in actually after the first draft of the script. We wanted to establish quite how low Carolyn and Lester's relationship had got before the beginning of the movie, effectively. So we had this look that Carolyn gives Lester as he drops his bag all over the place. Here he is in another cell, again unaware that he's there, really, trapped in his car, and this is his view of the outside world that he seems to have lost touch with from the inside of the car. Here he is again in a jail cell, the bars of the screen reflecting in this sea of nondescript workplace greys, and a very beautiful production design by Naomi Shohan, who really understood it. And if you look carefully, in fact if you look closer, you'll see on his board, "Look closer," which is the tagline for the movie, and this is where we got it from. Jan, our set dresser, rather brilliantly put it up on Lester's board. This is one of my favourite lines in the movie here. "For you, Brad, I've got 5. Barry Sherman. Supercilious and infuriating. And that's another.
I love his tie.
I love the fact that Lester is holding a pencil here with a rubber on it, with a soccer ball at the end of it. He really has no self-respect at all. And I love this shot as well. This is him very distant and isolated. We storyboarded this movie very closely, and one of the wonderful things Conrad Hall did was he didn't object at all to the storyboards, and found them, in fact, in many ways, releasing. And look how beautifully he's lit this scene. The way the light spills across the front of Brad, doesn't hit his face. The way the light sort of streaks across into the room, and the plainness of the setting. That's this very muted colour scheme that we went for, taking away all the reds and all the warm and hot colours in the story until very, very limited things like the red front door and the red roses. I love that when Lester leans forward into the light and the light hits his face. Here's Lester and Carolyn arriving back from work, mid-flow. This always strikes me as one of his rare little bits of freedom as he walks to the house, actually, looking across to the Fitzes moving in next door. As he walks to the house, he does a wonderful thing. He stops on the front doorstep and looks back as if longing to just get out of the place, and his bid for freedom. She rambles on about the tree that she's cut down. That little line as she goes into the house is an improvisation. Here's these stills of the family photos, which I wanted to give a sense of history, and with a minimum of effort. It's a kind of homage to the way Terence Malick uses still photographs in Badlands. And this is another homage, which is to I didn't make many homages in the movie, but these are two in quick succession, which is to Ordinary People. There's a slow push in on a family dinner scene. One of the reasons I love this shot, and I held it for so long, is that it's something the stage teaches you in a way, is how to tell a story through the distance you put between characters. And I worked very hard with Naomi to get the right size table here to put enough distance between the characters to make them, as it were, alienated from each other. And Conrad, of course, helps with the beautiful lighting. The way he lights Jane in the centre of the frame there, he actually put a small light behind the vase of roses. She looks like a kind of Madonna there. But again and again I covered a scene and then decided to go with a very, very simple shot. And this push-in was timed very, very slow, stealthy push-in. I was very concerned to make sure there was tension in the frame at all times. And I avoided using Steadicam because I don't like the Steadicam wobble very much. And this was something that I only cut to close-ups after she leaves the table. I wanted that tension in the shot from the beginning. Here's Lester unable to stand up to his wife. Magnificently drab costumes that Julie Weiss created on Lester, and his kind of schlubby walk based loosely on Walter Matthau. This is a beautiful piece of writing, Alan. I think this very short scene, I always thought it was a wonderful scene, is Lester's attempt to establish some sort of line of communication with his daughter. Kind of she just it's too far gone. It's been too long. Don't you think he just can't do it anymore?
Well, it's gone on so long that they're both scared of it now.
Yes, it's too difficult for her to make the leap, really. Look at her. That's
I love that shot.
And here's the first time we go back to video after the opening. It took us a long time to get the quality of these video shots right, and this is another favourite shot. This is the first time we see who is filming, and of course it's Ricky. Wes. One of the wonderful things about Wes's performance is his stillness and his incredible focus. We were lucky enough to have 2 weeks rehearsals, and one of the things we worked on was finding the confidence with Ricky to do as little as possible, and that still watchful centre. Look at that look he gives. Extraordinary when you consider he wasn't looking at anything at all except a film crew. This is a moment Lester senses something maybe his future. A moment I've always liked, again from script stage. And the Tom Newman theme that comes in, it's reprised later, one of the most beautiful themes in the movie. I mean, he's a fantastic composer, and it's such a lonely, melancholy piece of music. And here's Carolyn, jaunty as anything. We shot this whole sequence in one day. It was a crazy day. We did about 35 setups in a day. And she was amazing. It was the third day of shooting, and she just tore through it. She was an animal.
She's possessed.
Possessed, truly possessed by this woman.
I will sell this house today.
Here she is, so looking forward to this day when she sells this house. And we spent a lot of time in the cutting room getting this sequence right, and there were two sequences I cut over and over again, and the first was the whole first sequence, because trying to start the movie and get the tone right was one of the most difficult things. And this was another incredibly cut to pieces sequence, was to try and get a sense of mischief and like a spark to the sequence, but not to make it unreal, not to make her ridiculous. And again, Tom Newman's music helps in that respect. It has a kind of underlying melancholy at the same time as driving the sequence forward and keeping its momentum going. This is a great Conrad Hall shot. This wasn't storyboarded. He often came up with brilliant ideas on the day. This is the native stone fireplace. These couples all had lines, very funny lines as well. In the end, I ended up cutting them out because it made the sequence last a little too long. I actually miss the lines that the gentleman you're about to see used to have. He used to have a great story about a ceiling fan falling on his cousin's shoulder in a bar and ruining his career. I still miss that. I still hear him saying it, you know what I mean? Whenever I get to the scene, I kind of expect him to say it. So much of this picture is to do with rhythm and changes of pace. Going from a sequence that moves quickly like this to the stillness of the room that follows the sequence. These ladies are truly terrific. Giving her a hard time. Annette improvised endless lines in the scene, all of which would have graced the scene, but again, it made it last a little too long, and so when we hit this scene, it just came a little too late. Whereas now I think it comes, and it's wonderful to hear an audience still laughing, beginning to laugh at this scene, and then gradually shut up as they realise she's suffering. We did this in one take. Annette did this. I thought, this is it. It's in the movie. I'm not going to change it. And again, look how beautifully lit it is. Those blinds behind her and the light just touching her face. This is quite upsetting to shoot, actually. We were all stuck in the other room watching the monitor screen. I kind of nervously ventured out at the end of the scene. I mean, she was... she's extraordinary. Look at the way she puts her face back together there. It's incredibly moving, and the way the light hits her fingernails. I particularly like that. And Conrad always goes on about her fingernails. Silver nail polish. And then leaving us in the empty room. Again, Alan, this was in the script, and one of the beautiful descriptions that all we did was shoot it, really. Ball game. Spent a long time mixing a sound for the ball game, trying to give a sense of excitement, but not make it sound like a 10,000 seat auditorium. And here's our first sighting of Angela, who is she's kind of arranging her hair. I rather like this take. So not into the ball game. Vaguely applauding.
They know they're supposed to care, but they just don't.
And here's Caroline and Lester on the way to the ball game. Lester miserable because he's missing the James Bond marathon on TNT. And another great line to end the scene. I mean, one of, if I may say so, with Alan sitting here, one of the great skills, one of the great gifts of a screenwriter is to have this incredible capacity to paint a scene at such speed. I mean, 3 or 4 lines, and to end it with such wit and brevity. I mean, it's kind of exceptional. You know exactly where they are when they enter this auditorium. And there he is, miserable to be made to sit to watch this. And here is my homage to Bob Fosse on Broadway. All That Jazz, one of my favourite movies, and I was looking for big band music for the girls to dance to, and I stumbled on this, and I just thought this is too good an opportunity to waste. And so Paula Abdul came up with the idea of the bowler hats. Paula Abdul choreographed this sequence. She used to be a Laker girl, and she did this very skillful semi-pastiche of a bad cheerleader act.
And we dubbed Jane the reluctant Spartanette.
Exactly. I love the fact that in that wide shot, Jane kicks her hat by mistake. I try to find that take. And this peel off was something that was storyboarded and designed, and this long push in. So she just zoom in because the floor was uneven. And a zoom into Lester. This is him going into the tunnel of his fantasy for the first time. And this fantastic look that she gives him, where he just he loses himself, and the lights gradually fade around the girls, and then she's alone, and then he's alone. Again, this is very closely storyboarded, but we choreographed a much longer dance sequence, and we can then put it together in the editing room. This is really a testament to Tariq Anwar, and also to Chris Greenbury, who began editing the movie. This is the beginning of the replayed hand gestures over and over again. I use this double, triple jump cut thing. I don't know what to call it. Here's a classic example of it, where just continue the movement of the hands in the cut backwards, but to keep a sense of flow. We do that in all three fantasies, 3 of the 4 fantasies. Here again, repetitions. And then the beginning of the rose petal imagery in Lester's fantasies. And that's a CGI shot. It took a long time to get right. It was based on the later rose petal fantasies, but I think they came up with it pretty well in the end.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love this scene.
Here is one of my favourite scenes as well. Lester nervous like a teenager in the face of Angela. I think Mina plays this scene brilliantly, actually. The looks she gives Lester are perfectly judged, knowing, and yet there's one. Look at that. She just lets him dig his own grave, really. And Kevin is exceptional in this scene. Absolutely brilliant. He's just so nervous. He can barely speak. And again, there he is in that beige, sporting jacket before his transformation. I think, again, one of my favourite pieces of writing in the movie is the way Kevin says, "Okay." Yes. When she says,
"Okay,
this is
nice
Angela.
To meet you."
Okay, nice to meet you. And again, there was a line there which I cut out. I just loved the look she gave him. It was enough. He's just dying. He's a stuck pig here, and they're both just staring at him like a total freak.
Yes.
Again, there was another line which I took out, and
I love that look on her face.
I know, she's just so embarrassed. I think we all know that feeling, that parents just excruciatingly embarrassing at times. And here's another beautiful CGI shot. We actually shot this as a real rose petal, and we dangled it on a string and then CGI'd out the string and manipulated the rose petal. And this is another fantasy as written by Alan. Originally it was a pool of water she was in above him, and then I turned it into a sea of roses, which is just easier to get together and to shoot. We had very little time to shoot this movie. And this is a real Magritte image, the corners of the room visible. It's one of the reasons why I shot in Super 35, which is the widescreen format, is to be able to do things like that. And then cut into a mid-shot where it's just the roses and her. When we first shot this, we shot it on a high-speed camera at 120 frames with real rose petals being dropped from cranes, and then we reversed the film. But when we first shot it, the camera broke. It's a high-speed camera. And I watched the dailies and of what was there, which was very little. It was all damaged film. But she was immobile, and thank God we were able to shoot it again, because it's one of the things that makes it so beautiful is her motion, But we were shooting at 120 frames, which is 6 times slower than normal speed as you look at the image. So she had to move very fast in order that her movement was going to be detected at all. So she was actually flapping her arms up and down like a kind of demented butterfly. And when it came out, it looked exquisite and slow and beautiful. Here's a scene of Angela making Jane feel. Almost instinctively, I think Angela does this. I don't think she's entirely malicious. I just think she's so happy and so pleased with the way she looks and seems that She just can't resist talking about it.
Which is great. Because there's nothing worse in life than being ordinary.
And look at that shot of Thora. She doesn't feel good about herself when she's with Angela. Stoned or not stoned.
Because everything that was meant to happen does. Eventually.
This is another transition which I like very much, which is the jump to almost total silence, just the crickets and the video image of Jane. We actually shifted the sound perspective whenever we went to video, or most of the time we went to video. Scott Milan, Bob Beamer, great sound mixers at Todd AO. Just they really nailed this. It's very poetic, it's very subtle. You don't really notice it, but it makes a big difference. And then when we cut to film, as we are here, and here's a classic case. This is where Ricky's camera brings him closer to Jane, so he's using it to reach out to her. He's not being a voyeur. He's using that zoom just to see her face. In some way, I wanted to establish the real distance between them, and then the fact that the camera brought him closer to her. And this is the first time you know that Jane is as interested in Ricky as Ricky is in Jane. So she darts across the room and then looks out the window, and he's gone. Just the chair left. Again, a description exactly as written in the screenplay by Alan, looking out the window. And this is a beautiful piece of Conrad Hall lighting and camera work, that very slow push in and that light just trickling onto her mouth so you can see her smile. And another empty room, like the sale house. This is Leicester the following morning. I use this technique a fair amount, kind of instinctively. I'm not sure that I don't use it too much, actually, which is to cut to close-up and then cut back. You jump into the middle of a scene and then you cut back to reveal who it is and what's happening. This is a bit of French farce. We found this house with two doors next to each other, and I thought we could see these two stories going on simultaneously.
Hello? Why'd you call me?
Again, Conrad's lighting beautiful, the way the light hits her on the bed and then the rest of the room is in near darkness. I think that's exquisite. He's a real artist, It's a really... his whites are white and his blacks are black. The contrast in it is so beautiful. And, he's a great guy. And back to Ricky's video camera. Again, I love the fact that we only really go handheld once in the movie apart from the videos. This has a kind of kinetic energy to it. And then this is the still image of Ricky just watching in those windows which we knocked through the wall. That light on the wall behind him, again, is something Conrad did, which was beautiful. And again, to establish the real distance between them, I threw in that shot at the end, just to show the audience how far away the houses were from each other. This is the great Alison Janney and the great Chris Cooper, two astonishing actors who just brought so much to these roles. In fact, so much, I would say, Alan, that in the end, a lot of we actually cut scenes out because they achieved everything that those scenes required of them.
Oh, totally.
In almost total silence. The pain and the longing and the history that they brought with them to this relationship. Again, it was very helpful to rehearse, to talk about what they'd been through together as a couple and when they'd married. Various secret histories of the characters. And one of my favourite lines, that this country is going straight to hell. Here's Scott and Sam with their basket of goodies from their garden. And magnificent the way Chris chooses to play this scene. He's in a good mood, which is one of the choices he made in rehearsals, which was so skillful, to give this man colour. He's in a good mood. He's perfectly happy to talk to these guys. He just wants to know what they're selling. It's a genuine misunderstanding. He'd probably buy something off them. And he doesn't mind door-to-door salesmen. It's just suddenly he realises who they are and what they're saying. And
he is a tax attorney.
Then the look on his face says it all. There it is. Oh dear. Then we jump into this scene with he's driving his son to school.
How come these faggots always have to rub it in your face?
Again, and
How can they be
it's
so shameless?
dangerously close to the edge, this, and he plays it with such conviction. And this is so much
Well, it is.
an example of so many of the scenes in the movie, the early scenes, that characters, as they establish themselves early on, turn out to be not at all whom you expect them to be. This is a key scene in that whole strategy, and the way Wes delivers this line. I actually extended this look in the cutting room. I just loved the look they were giving each other, and so I held on to it a little longer, double the cuts there.
Me too, son.
Just in that pause, he really is thinking what to say. He's thinking, "Are you being serious? Are you?"
Mm-hmm.
I'm serious. He just pulled down his pants and yanked it out.
Here are these girls watching open mouth as Angela tells them another one of her stories.
It was kind of cool. So what did you do?
This gave us a lot of trouble, this, with printing the white wall,
He's a really well-known photographer.
and the skin tones were very difficult to judge. I mean, if you've got the right skin tones, we tended to turn the wall green. This girl on the right was rather good, but she was also a Mormon, and so she couldn't smoke.
I didn't know that.
She's very good, though. She delivers a...
I love that look she gives.
Yeah. This final look here.
Yeah.
So there. Yes, nasty piece of swearing there from Angela, which, as a Brit, makes me laugh a lot. It tends to get a gasp when most of the preview audiences. Like, in fact, the first preview we did of this movie, 4 people just stood straight up when she said that and walked straight out the door. But I find it very funny, I'm afraid. I love the tone of intense seriousness that she adopts here.
Oh, yeah.
You know, this is just a big deal, you know, a mental institution. And I love the name Connie Cardulo.
Yeah.
But I asked Alan, where's she from? Is she one of your old schoolmates? Or maybe not allowed to say, in fact,
No, I don't think I ever knew a Connie Cardulo.
It's just a great name.
You were defending him. You love him. You want to have like 10,000.
You want to have like 10,000 of his babies.
That actually, I heard somebody yell at Bono at a U2 concert.
Oh, really? What did
Yes.
she say?
She stood up. She went, "I love you, Bono. I want to have like 10,000 of your babies."
You really don't need to have some psycho obsessing about me right now.
Also, again, the way this shifts from something quite petty and suburban to this intense gaze. Again, I held this look longer than we did when we shot it. And again, one of Conrad's, this beautiful framing on this, the huge shoulder and shot and those eyes, you know, Ricky staring and Jane staring back. There's a little theme of when she holds his gaze, which is later on, she decides to go home with him, and that's a big deal. That's the beginning of their relationship. And I love this shot of him walking into the sun with his shadow behind him. We actually took this first out when the sun was in the right place. And I deliberately held this shot on Jane, side shot, rather than on Angela. Just wanted to see the effect it was having on her rather than just get the joke. I think we get it anyway. This is a scene that Alan wrote late on just before we shot, actually. We were trying to find just more insights into the Colonel's home life, and he wrote this amazing wordless scene, or practically wordless scene, which I loved and fought for actually in the movie, and it was actually placed in a different point in the story, and I shifted it earlier. If you look carefully, Ricky's still wearing his waiter's uniform, which is actually doesn't wear for another day. And there's Ronald Reagan. I found this is public domain television that I had to choose because we couldn't afford to buy what was described in the script, and it actually turned out better. I love the laugh that Chris Cooper gives it. You know, this is comedy. That's what I call comedy. This is real comedy here. And the silence that reigns when Ricky enters the room. And here's one of the few times I used Steadicam in the movie, following Lester and Karen. I was originally going to do this from the front, Steadicam them from the front, and we got on set, and I looked at it through the viewfinder, and I just thought this is so much more expressive and observational. It seemed less in your face, and also Kevin and Annette were brilliant at kind of turning around very subtly and sharing it with us, bumping into people as they went. Here's the first appearance of Peter Gallagher and his magnificent steely grey hair. I love the way Annette plays this scene. She is absolutely magnificent here.
Oh, she is, yeah.
It's just, she's mortified. He first forgets her name, and then there's Christy, his trophy wife, played by Amber Smith.
Amber Smith.
This is quite an eccentric piece of framing on my part, the 3-shot and then the odd eye line in the return. It was my first couple of days, and I think every director has moments when you just think, oh, I wish I'd just put the camera in a different place. But I do love her performance. The performance she gives here is just tremendous. The way she tries to cover up her humiliation and embarrassment. One of the things I loved about the script when I first read it was this completely irrational things that he began doing just out of sheer anger and rage. He just thought, oh, I can't be bothered to do any of this, you know. He just couldn't resist it. He just gives her a big wet kiss. Look at the look on Annette's face. And now watch how she tries to recover now, you know. That line of Peter's is an improvisation, the way he says, I see. All that tension. No, look, the way she tries to say, oh, he's such a wag, my husband, you know. That is the hand of Bruce Cohen, the producer, who actually was in this scene until I cut him out. This is my way of establishing power over Bruce and Diane. Dan also was Dan Jinks also in a scene. I cut him out, but didn't stop them being brilliant producers and loyal and supportive throughout the whole process. Again, another very skillful piece of structural writing. Again, the last person you expect to see here is Ricky, and there he is, standing right next to Lester. And Lester at his lowest ebb here. This kind of angel dressed in white arrives and offers him a joint, and life is never quite the same again.
We called it the joint of destiny.
Exactly. Yeah, that was one of our many subtitles for the movie. The Reluctant Spartan. The
Reluctant Spartan.
Was the joint of destiny. And this is it. He thinks, actually, you know, I'd love to get stoned. I haven't been stoned for years. We did 12 takes of this scene, and every single one was gold dust. It was so difficult to choose, but she is just... It was just... The thing that tipped the balance was the way she ate the olive in this scene. Again, a slow push-in, a very stealthy move, and it seems... I actually got them moving slightly closer together as we pushed in. So we lost the sense of who was around them. That's Peter. Peter's brilliant in this scene, actually, the way he's very still, he listens. He's basking in her adoration, and she's basking in his attention. And she's just, you know, people can't believe she was sober when she did this scene, and she's so well judged. Stops her dead in her tracks there. And he says, absolutely.
I'll do that.
And then this long, lingering look when they both know what they're thinking, but they're not capable of quite admitting it yet. This is a shot that was storyboarded. Conrad was more than happy to shoot it as storyboarded, but again, look at the way he lit it. Beautiful from the left there. Contrast, and then this manager in silhouette behind the orange door. This is actually... we spent weeks looking for a plain breeze block wall. I just wanted a wall with no detail on it, just a plain canvas. Got Lester skulking in the shadows there with his name tag on. Even his name tag is kind of stooping, you know. He said, "Can I put this name tag on sideways?" You know, it's a great line. Yeah? You just became my personal hero. And this really is the beginning of things turning for Lester. You know, he's something happens to him on this night. He just gets released. I think his spirit begins to be released for the first time, and the way he collapses into gear. This is one of my favourite shots. Again, you see Carolyn's arm coming out of the service entrance, and look at he hides the joint. Boom, there. After he hears her voice, and then we rack focus to Carolyn. Again, magnificent hairdo that they came up with, and this is. I just said to Kevin, "Why don't you just lose it and have a case of the giggles?" And he just nailed it. People don't believe that these guys were not stoned in this scene. This is genuinely acting. And one of the things Kevin achieves so brilliantly in this is this vulnerability and freedom.
I'm ready to go. I'll meet you out front.
He's normally so Machiavellian, you know.
I love that
control.
look she gives back.
Yeah, that's the way, that suspicious look. And he says, "Oh man, I'm in trouble." You know, so it's going to happen on the way home. She's drunk and he's stoned. And I love this Lester going back into his world, leaving Ricky alone. The stillness staring up at the sky. Again, I'm working very hard on just that last beat of stillness with Wes, just making him stop moving and shifting around. Not that it was difficult, he's fantastic. Here are the girls. They've been watching that Eels video, care of DreamWorks Records. Here's a shot that wasn't storyboarded, which I'm very fond of, which is a shot we came out with Conrad. That door closing to reveal Angela standing there.
I love that look on his face.
Yeah, but you did miss
Stunned.
Stricken.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I saw you, you looked kind of wound up.
And this is, I remember even now vividly the description of this in the script, going into slow motion. I shot this in 3 speeds. The hand moves in 3 speeds. That was 24. This, I think, is 48. And then I think this is even slower. I'm not sure. And again, it's this motif of the hand, this continuous movement of the hand, this jump cutting back. When he goes into this fantasy world, we work very hard on trying to get the right level in the fantasies so that you weren't absolutely certain he was going into fantasy, both musically and filmically as well. It's a 360-degree track, done by rather primitive means. It used a turntable for this shot, and then a little push in at the end of it to Lester reaching into his mouth for this final rose petal when you're absolutely certain it's a fantasy. And then the music splashing over the cut, which I like very much, and then going immediately back into wide shot again. Very kind of almost deliberately pedestrian wide shot. Very still, very kind of far back, and then there's Lester coughing out his root beer out of sheer excitement at the thought of Angela staying the night. This is a shot that was again fortuitous, that Lester in the darkness against that white wall. It's partly to do with the location that we found, and then listening to the girls inside in this kind of warm, vibrant, inside the bedroom atmosphere.
Unlike anywhere else in the house.
Exactly, yeah. In fact, the interior of Jane's room was something we wanted to make. I wanted to make it feel very. It's a sort of little beating heart in this cool house. I wanted a warm colour, these purple drapes and this orange wall, which Conrad was worried it was going to kind of be garish, but I actually think it has a great deal of warmth and spirit, and there's detail in this room, and there's that mirror that we use a lot later. This is Lester, that great moment when he thinks that they hear him, and he gets out of there quickly. Again, this is another one of those seamless transitions that was in the script, really, which is the transition from the bedroom, them looking out, and then jumping onto video, and then Ricky then just taking our attention downstairs to the garage. So if you watch this is the beginning of a chain of events of Lester outside the door, then into the girls, then here we jump across now to Ricky looking in with the video camera. This is one of my favourite shots in the movie. I actually shot it myself on one of the small video cameras that we had, and I love it because it seems to be a microcosm of the whole film, really. You zoom past the thing that you think is beautiful, the thing that you think is interesting and sexy, and here is something infinitely more interesting. And again, this shot establishes the 2 windows of the garage, which become very important later on, and I was very careful to place them early in the movie. We actually had to knock holes in that wall in order to make those windows the size that we wanted them to be, and the gap between them is very important, as you see later when the Colonel overlooks Ricky and Lester in the garage. And this is when Lester decides that the time has come, having heard what Angela has said about him, for him to buff up. And so he picks up these pathetic weights, which are just so small, they're barely. And we debated whether it's too extreme to have him take all his clothes off, and we just thought, no, actually, he's just saying, fuck it, let's have a look at what's there, come on. And it all comes off. Again, kind of brave on the part of Kevin to be that vulnerable and seemingly foolish. And as he looks at his reflection in the window. Again, this great kind of motif in the movie of people looking at themselves, their changing images, reflections in mirrors and windows. And what I love about this is Lester is staring at himself and Ricky is staring at Lester. Lester is focusing intently on his own reflection, but Lester is pushing in, Ricky is pushing in with his video camera. And this look on his face is misinterpreted by the Colonel later on when he finds the videotape in Ricky's study. And again, this chain of action, this sort of knock-on, continues, and then the Colonel knocks on the door and we go to another scene. In actual fact, this is really one continuous scene from the moment Lester's listening at the door, but it's obviously not. It's 5 scenes, 5 separate pieces of interaction, but it's very fluid the way it moves from house to house, and it's one of the things that gives the movie a feeling of scale. I was very conscious that even though these 2 houses were next to each other, we needed to give it a kind of almost epic feeling. This is another wonderful piece of acting by Chris Cooper. I said to him to try and summon up the courage to ask his boy downstairs for a drink and a talk, and then fail, and he made something wonderful out of it. This inarticulacy that he made it such a facet of the Colonel. This is Ricky replacing the empty urine canister with some frozen urine. And I wanted the audience here to not quite be sure whether we were going into a fantasy or not. This is Lester getting up at night and just walking the corridor, go and have a pee, you know. Again, this is not Steadicam. This is a dolly shot. Again, I love the tension in it. I don't like the Steadicam wobble. It makes me feel seasick always. And then this steam, and he thinks, hang on a minute. And this is another good move here, that the way the camera pulls back when he closes the door. There's something ominous, and then we cut inside as the music changes. We spent hours with steam. We built this set because I wanted it to feel almost like a religious altar, you know, like there she was at the end of this kind of.
I've been waiting for you.
It's a series of journeys that he goes on in the movie. It's mythical in his own mind as he approaches the altar, and there's this overhead shot of Angela. We CGI'd the steam in the overhead shot because we had to knock a hole in the ceiling of the set to shoot it, and all the steam disappeared.
Working out, haven't you? I can tell.
And we spent a long time getting this angle right. It looked very mundane. We shot it from 2 different angles and it didn't work. And I wasn't happy, and we kept moving the camera around. And here again is this recurring motif of the hand, the fluidity. It's something to do with the mind lingering over and relishing moments of eroticism, which, you know, in retrospect, when you cut to the next scene here, seem pathetically sad, but have elements of beauty and wonder in them, you know. Now, this is a scene that we barely were able to shoot this scene. That Annette could not stop laughing. The fact that the sound that his hand made under the covers as he was wanking was just too much for her. She just couldn't get her lines out. And I also asked Kevin, in order to keep it alive, to find 3 different ways of describing wanking for every take, which of course made it even funnier for her. So, you know, on the cutting room floor is, you know, milking the lizard and jerking the gherkin and deboning the trout and etc., etc. Kevin took great delight in coming up with new and different descriptions. But this, in all honesty, is a crucial scene. It's kind of the biggest turning point for him. He's captured wanking and pretends that he wasn't. That wonderful swallow sound he makes when he's got. But then he turns on her, and out it all pours. And I think I wanted this to feel it was the first time he was ever able to put into words what he really felt about her. And I don't think it's pre-planned. I wanted it to seem spontaneous. And I tended to use the most spontaneous seeming takes, and the less rehearsed in a way. And it really needed to get from a place at the beginning of the scene where he was, you know, vulnerable and at a loss to a moment of triumph by the end of the scene. And here it is. He's finished it off. That's his full stop, slamming his head in the pillow, and then this little trace of a smile. He can't believe he's done it. He's finally breaking free. And then we return to this flying shot, which is a recurring image, which of course ends the movie. And each one we get closer to the street. It actually ends with going into the red door. And again, this very clever, beautifully written voiceover that Lester speaks. It's a wonderful line. It's surprising what else you can do that you've forgotten about. And here he is, jogging with the gyms, deciding to really get into shape. And I think we can all associate with this line, last line of this little scene. I want to look good naked. Here was a scene that was difficult to shoot. out in the bright sunshine, Conrad had to rig up a big shadow sheet in order to be able to shoot this so it didn't all blow and seem bleached. It's the beginning of the Colonel's misunderstandings about Lester's sexuality. One of the things I love about this scene is how much life is in Kevin. It's so... he exudes so much energy. He does a great job of seeming like he's run 2 miles in a terrible state of fitness, but the sense in which he seems to be inventing it on the spot is something that he does again and again in this film, and it's so skillful, the way he apologises for that bad joke. But and here he's trying to find a way of asking Ricky to get up to the room to buy dope, but he can't quite put it into words, and that semi-intentional spontaneity is really impressive in the performance, laughing outside the service entrance, and time and again the relaxation. She cut a scene out there where they come in and they see Barbara watching a wildlife documentary, which I loved that scene. I'm not sure you ever even saw it.
I never saw it, no, because I wasn't on the set that day.
No, it was a beautiful scene, but it's a scene that was repeated later on with Jane, when Jane comes into the house, and I felt it was the same beat twice, really.
One of my clients is a nurse in a pediatrician's office.
And here's a line he's about to say, which is a hangover from the days when we had a framework on either side of the film. The reference to Pink Floyd was that we actually set the last sequence of the movie to Us and Them by Pink Floyd. We had Ricky singing in his jail cell, would you believe? Because the framework is in the framework, the kids were found guilty of Lester's death.
It's been a while. How much is an ounce?
And here's one of these wonderful scenes where, when I was cutting it, all I remember was the crew crammed into a tiny room, and where I was sitting and where everyone else was sitting, and then you cut these scenes together, and the alchemy of movie making, suddenly the room is empty of people, just 2 people and a light coming through the window. There's a stillness and a peace, and you forget where you were sitting, and you forget where the crew were. And this is a particular example of that sort of scene where, for months, I was just remembering the day that we shot it, and suddenly you forget it. Everybody disappears, and it's just 2 characters in a room.
You don't have to pay now. I know you're good for it.
And this is another stage, really, in Lester's awakening.
Beat me anytime, day or night.
And the way he's almost as a child in this room with Ricky, that Ricky seems to be the adult, that Ricky is selling him the drugs, and the way he looks around the room with that sort of tone of extreme adulation and wonderment. And this little take here, this close-up, it's very interesting. Kevin did it the same line 4 times back to back, and often I would keep the camera rolling and just say, do the line again, and he kept messing it up. And then the last take he got right, and it seemed utterly effortless and natural. But I love this sense in which Ricky becomes the adult in the scene, and Lester looks at him almost with the eyes of a child. That shake of the head, as if to say, where did this kid come from? Here's Carolyn sniffing the air and hearing distant sounds of Dylan coming from the garage. This actually was a longer scene, which I thought was very, very funny. And but again, when we got it into the movie, it broke the rhythm of Lester's journey at this point. This is kind of the centre of the beginning of the second act in Hollywood parlance. And it just seemed too long. And again, the same scene played over and over again, which was basically Lester humiliating his wife.
Right.
And that favourite line of mine is... psychotropic substances line. And I think a favourite lines of Alan's, I would be right in saying, it's bloodless, money-grubbing freak. Freak is such a great word. I like this shot with the weights coming up into frame. And this shot was quite difficult to get timed right, the push in on his face as he was bobbing on. I think you want to smash the camera with his weights. And then this jump cut into the scene with Brad. This actually, again, I love the way this scene is lit. Look at the light on the wall behind Brad. I mean, it's this was shot at night. This is a testament again to Conrad's exquisite lighting. And this actually had a full. We had to do the prop letter, and Alan wrote a complete letter, which was, I have to say, was so funny that we recorded I shot him reading the whole letter, which I believe ended with, "Please tell
Don't
Craig
forget
to
to-
go. Tell Craig. What was it? You have to
Don't forget to fuck yourself. That is, if you can.
No, don't forget to tell Craig to go fuck himself. That is, if he ever takes his dick out of your ass.
Right.
That was the last line. And I just thought it was a little bit too much when we came to cut the movie. But this again is a classic case. I mean, Kevin discovered this on the 8th or 9th take, played it absolutely brilliantly. Lester worked out what he wanted on the spur of the moment. He didn't come in here with a plan to humiliate Brad. He just trusted his instinct, and there's a real sense of live thought in this scene, which is incredibly difficult to achieve, I think. And he does genuinely get one up over him.
You are one twisted fuck.
Great line.
Nope. I'm just an ordinary guy with nothing to lose.
There was again a last line to the scene, and we didn't need it. That's a shot that I added in because of that pane of glass that we found on the location, and because I'd already shot this scene, and I sensed that it would cut together with this opening track into the restaurant, get that sense of fluidity and movement. I've dubbed this scene Peter Gallagher's eyebrows, on the basis that they are. People don't believe they're real. Those eyebrows are very expressive.
I'm so sorry.
And one of my favourite pieces of acting in the movie is in this scene, which is Annette's look. The look on her face, the shot after this, when she realises that Buddy and Christy are splitting up, and she's trying to pretend to be concerned, but inside she's utterly thrilled.
Yes.
And it's just coming up. He's remembering them. Yeah, look at this. She's trying to be concerned, but she just can't help looking happy.
When I saw you two at the party.
And we cut to close up for Buddy's philosophy, and the Tom's music does something beautiful at this point as well. This very high marimba figure that weaves its way in and out of this whole sequence. This was storyboarded. This shot here, I actually drew it for Annette to show what I wanted her to do, which was to look over the top of the menu and just cut her eyes off like that. And that look of longing. This is a shot that Conrad came up with, which he was standing on a box in order to get that shot, but it really was worth it.
What are you doing?
I was filming
And
this
again, this is as written. You know, we jump straight inside the video camera, and we're on that dead bird, and then we
I think maybe you
know who's shooting because we've seen him. But again, another one of these zooms in past Angela, past the conventional
I
beauty,
want you to stop filming me.
into the person that Ricky thinks is much more interesting.
Well, whatever.
And then we change the sound. The soundscape alters when we go from video to back to reality, as well as the colour and the
Are you
flatness of the
crazy?
tone from
I don't
video
wanna
to.
end up had to kiss
Though I
you.
think the video is actually very beautiful, very kind of
It's okay.
poetic in its own way. It's the way it's contrasts, it dries everything together, so it seems like a flatter image. And this is the moment she decides to
Jane?
walk home with Ricky. She holds his gaze this time. Look at the smile he gives her. It's triumphant.
Jane,
And this actually replaced a scene that had them much longer scene, and Alan wrote that at the last minute. Alan was there on set the whole time, and it was a great scene that he wrote there, and the one that follows this sequence, this crane shot taking us into the. Now this is not a body double of Annette Bening or Peter Gallagher. This is them, and you can tell she does yoga. Is all I can tell you. Again, another scene where they were struggling not to laugh for obvious reasons, but they succeeded. Again, one of the things the script did beautifully when I first read it, and I tried to keep in the movie, was that this series of scenes where characters were alone with themselves, and just free of all inhibitions, or whether it's Carolyn alone in the sale house, or Angela later on alone on the stairs, or Jane staring at her reflection in the mirror, and this is another one where he's just utterly unself-conscious. I wanted it to be utterly unself-conscious, and Kevin achieved that with great ease, I think. Just getting the lyrics wrong to the song, things like that, but singing anyway. The sort of things that you do when you're alone in your car. And splashing out on a burger. Little does he know that's the beginning of his next career. Smoking a joint. And here's lovely Marissa Winoka, who's genuinely hilarious. And I actually took the most low-key of her takes here. She seemed. I wanted something as downbeat as possible.
I'm looking for the least possible amount of
And his Dennis, being the manager, can't believe that. Let's just ruin his day in this way. The look at it he gives him at the end of the scene. Again, this was shot at night. Conrad, amazing how he blows that window out behind Dennis there on the right. Covers the window with that huge burger photo. I love that look he gives him. A look of total despair in his face. And here's another beautifully lit scene. I love the way that the light streaks across the room and puts Annette's face into darkness. And the sound. The studio got very worried when they saw the dailies for this scene. They said, it's too dark, we can't see their faces, you know. And Conrad said, no, we'll just print it up, you know. And his the skill of a cinematographer isn't just in the lighting and the composition of shots and the way the camera moves, it's also in the printing process afterwards, the way that he chooses to print and the stops that he shoots at and the stock that he shoots on and what they print on. It's a remarkably complex and fascinating process if you can take the time to go in there and watch them do it. A moment of romance at the end. And this is the scene that Alan wrote at the last minute. And I decided to just shoot it in this wide shot. I didn't take any coverage on the scene at all. I just felt very confident that the movie needed to breathe at this point and we needed to get outside with them. And I asked very specifically for an avenue of trees. I kind of had this, I don't know if you know, Alan, the Start Right advert in my head. There's a Start Right shoes in England. There was a boy and a girl walking down a long road with trees. And I just, for some reason, I just was determined to have that. And then this side shot for the funeral procession as they watch them go past. I chose this take where he's looking at the hearse and she's looking at the cortege, which I love. And he watches the coffin go. Again, Tom's music, which is very subtle in this scene, very subliminal, is exquisite. And I actually shot another long shot from the other side of the road and didn't look nearly as good. The lighting, the way the sun and the silhouettes of the trees weren't as beautiful. This really is exquisite. Well, it took us a long time because some guy down the end do you remember he kept spraying his car he kept spraying the road, and because he wanted to be paid.
Oh right, yeah.
Anyway, I love the way they stop just before he says Bootie, and we want to get this reflection of Barbara in the tabletop, and then this floating camera move as it rises up on the dolly. Let them come in the room, and the chandelier coming into shot from the top. I know I keep going on about Conrad's lighting, but here's another example. When we cut to close up, look at the light on Alison's face when she turns to see Jane. Fantastic. Look at her eyes. It's so poetic. It has such a sense of emptiness, this house, and it's not dark, strangely. I mean, the walls are dark, but it's not lit darkly. This scene is lit more darkly, which is the study scene. Again, I actually ended up taking a lot of Ricky's mother's lines out of the movie. I felt in inarticulacy. Not that she had many, but...
But she lives in such a world of silence, it makes sense.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
No.
I love how tender Ricky is with her, too.
It's beautiful, isn't it? He puts his hand on her shoulder and she grips it with such desperation. I found it quite difficult shooting this scene because this was the scene that when I was auditioning Ricky's and Jane's, we read over and over and over again, and when she came to shoot it, it was kind of like I'd already done it in some way.
Oh my god.
It's like official.
But I do like, I very much like the way
There's a whole subculture of people who collect this.
Wes and Thora play this. What I love about the scene is that he brings her into this room and he shows her the plate. He wants to see how she's going to react, but in a way he's telling him a very articulate, eloquent story about his father, that he's got this Nazi plate, but he only has this one Nazi plate. You know, he's not even a particularly good collector of Nazi memorabilia, which has always seemed to me both strange and tender, you know, that he says there's a whole subculture of people who collect this Nazi shit, but my dad just has this one thing. And here is one of the scenes that really attracted me to this script, one of the many scenes, but really almost more than anything was Alan's description of this, the most beautiful thing that Ricky's ever filmed. And he described it with such exquisite beauty. I thought, okay, I'm going to have to try and find a way of shooting this that is as good as it's described in the script. And
How did you shoot this?
well,
Because you
I'm not going to tell anyone
got
because
it perfect.
it took me 4 visits to various car lots around Los Angeles, and a lot of shouting at plastic bags. But I wanted a certain colour of the wall. I wanted the light as he describes it in the speech. The thing that really made it at the end of the 4th time we shot it was the leaves, which give it a sort of sense of kind of foot soldiers dancing around it. It's incredibly beautiful.
For 15 minutes.
I particularly like this shot. It spins like that. It's like Pavlova or something. And again, that was a slow push in, and I this was one of those scenes I cut once, and that was it. I never touched it again. I knew how I wanted it to be. I boarded it, and then I knew I wanted to cut to this close-up of Jane while he was talking. And if you look carefully, this is something possibly you can only see on the big screen. Watch her eyes moving and following the bag as he's talking. The way that Conrad gets the light in the corner of her eyes like that, it's just amazing.
But it helps me remember.
And he keeps speaking, and that perspective change as well. We bring the voice closer when we cut to the inside the screen, and look at that look she gives him. Wow. She was great. She is great. And this speech is just, it's really exquisite writing and fine acting, I think. And again, the light is very poetic in this scene. The way Conrad has printed it as well as he's printed it. He lit it a little bit brighter than this and printed it down. This was originally, I'd planned this and storyboarded this to take place in a wide shot as described in the script. He went and looked out of the window, as I remember in the script, and almost like he was in a trance. And then when we came to work on it, I thought, this is too good. And then there's this moment that again happened when we rehearsed the scene, that she took his hand, and I thought it was such a simple expression of tenderness, and the movie so needs it at this point. I cut this scene to take really quite a long time, and this chaste kiss that they give each other, which is genuinely touching.
She's so brave in this scene.
Yes, she just gets taken over. She goes from feeling doubtful about him to being utterly certain in 2 minutes. But then who wouldn't be after hearing that and seeing that? And then here we are, this abrupt right turn in tone, which, in order to get right, I needed to trail the music off under the close-up of Jane and leave a gap at the beginning of the scene when she came in with the music playing. It was a rhythm thing. The audience kind of enables them just to clear their palate before they get plunged in. This was a decision we made very early on in rehearsals, to start the scene with them both smiling at each other in that intense way, and to try and as much as possible cut Jane into the scene to give a sense of seeing this argument through the child's eyes. These looks that she gives them are very important to the scene, passing the baton from one to the other. And then these guys were just on fire when we rehearsed this scene and we shot it. They just did it over and over again. Again, they gave me so many options in the cutting room. And this dialogue she has with herself here was a scripted improvisation that she did in rehearsals, and Alan very painstakingly put it into the speech, and she did it. And this is where he is really, even his daughter realises that he's changing. He's dressing differently, he's drinking beer from a bottle, he's all untucked, not smart, taking the power into his own hands. And this is a deliberate reprise of the shot from earlier on, the 3 shot of the table. But again, things have subtly changed. The way he's sitting and the way he's dressing and the way the table is dressed, the way it's lit is different. It's much harsher lighting, the white tablecloth and the bounce. That was quite deliberate. The way the walls are closer, Conrad's lit the walls so that we feel tighter. It's more like a cell now. It's more intense. There's more heat in the scene. I love that look. That's a bullseye. I love the way that bit of that slice of lemon is left hanging on the wall. That wasn't intentional. And again, we rehearsed this. This is a classic case of why it's you have to take the time to rehearse scenes like this. The rhythm of it is entirely from rehearsals, the confidence that they have with the script. And Bobby Darin playing in the background. I have to tell you, I became a bit of a fan of Bobby Darin through this movie.
I'm a huge Bobby Darin fan.
We went into the archives of the Bobby Darin.
I love the Don't Rain on My Parade.
Don't Rain on My Parade is a masterpiece. There was a scene here which featured the Colonel finding his cabinet open, but I took that out as well because that lessened the shock later on. Again, these images of Jane in the mirror, always in the mirror, these reflecting, and the way the room is filled with mirrors, the light getting reflected, depth in this tiny location, which is a very, very small location. This was not a set, this was a location. Getting some depth to the room. And that great line that Annette has, me? But your dad's the freak, not me. She plays this so well, I can't believe that her parents didn't at some stage do this to her. I think we've all been through something similar. Again, it's great writing.
She's trying so hard to reach out to her.
I know.
In her mind,
I know. She's trying to be a parent. She's saying, I've got some information to impart, and
it's for your own good, and you need to know this.
Look, Mom, I really don't feel like having a Kodak moment here, okay?
Great, 2 great reaction shots. Look at that shot there. And the next shot that follows of Jane just staring back at her. The reproach and the wonder in her face. And then look at this, the regret. What did I just do? Well, I can't do anything right, Just those beats. That's where you see, I think, the humanity, the vulnerability of these characters. It's in those moments of silence. And this was shot on set. So we jumped from location to set then.
Aren't these like 3 shots in a row in completely different
places?
Yes.
Yeah. And then when she turns, we're in a different place again on the Warner Ranch. And it's a testament again to Conrad that he was able to match these shots. So they feel completely identical. And this is this was something I had in my head very, very early on. I storyboarded one of the first sequences I storyboarded. Again, it's this motif of people trapped behind glass and within frames. This very Magritte-like, Hopper-esque world. And I love this. I
love that her hand covers up the...
Yeah, that we took a while for the hand to cover the screen in his room. This is a very complex thing to shoot because we had to shoot her and then she had to match herself on the video screen because otherwise we would have been shooting the camera crew, if you know what I mean, with the video camera, and they would have appeared on the television. And I love this because there is that warm heart, little beating heart of Jane's room. Mm-hmm. Inside Ricky's cool, glassy room. And this to me is an expression of such vulnerability, and she gives herself to him in an amazing way. Again, this was as written, and I remember when I first read it, I thought this is not at all what I expected to happen. It just seems so exquisite, and that's why I decided to not cut away at this point. That feeling of just Thora was more than happy to do this, and in fact was very anxious that we did it as described. And then we cut to the image, and he's not shooting her breast; he's shooting her face. And then in comes the Colonel. And this sudden, again, shift of tone. I wanted in my experience, fights take place very quickly, and in movies they're always gone forever. They're always like the fight in Shane; they just go on and on and on. Although that is a great fight, this is over in a flash. He hits him 3 times, and I wanted to hit him unprofessionally. He hits him with a downward hit of the hand. I wanted it to kind of emotion and not malice, not forethought, and then he realises he's made a mistake and that he wasn't looking for money. He was showing his girlfriend something. And then we jump back here. And we're inside the room. I just love the sound. I love the way once the music trails off, that we're just left with the sound of his breathing. And this is the only time I went handheld in the entire movie with with our camera, as it were, with film. It has a kind of kinetic, kind of off-balance energy, which I really liked, even when, like it is here, it's supposedly still. I was too concerned most of the time with the tension in the frame to go handheld, but here it felt absolutely right. And it's still off balance even, right until the last shot of the sequence. Chris is just extraordinary here, trying to... And again, it's in very quick succession, 2 parents are trying to articulate to their children.
And end up striking them.
And end up hitting them, And again, it's another chain that Alan has created of, going from from Carolyn coming into the room to Jane looking out of the window to Ricky, and then the Colonel coming in on the Ricky scene. It's actually one long sequence. That's how I conceived of it and cut it. And but again, it was interrupted by a scene with the Colonel, I think, but this felt so much better. And then there's that world out of joint on the video screen there, the camera on the floor filming the Colonel's feet. And then this is a good piece of operation by Aaron, our camera operator, did it handheld. And this is another beautiful Conrad Hall wide shot there with the blue lamp, and then the lamp next to Ricky as he wipes the blood off his face. And here we are, Carolyn trying out Buddy's philosophy of the gun. Tried to do it in did do it in one shot.
I like that she got dressed up to go to the shooting.
Yeah. Well, she has to go straight home, and Lester says she looks great, and so it's.
But it's sort of like,
it's a special event,
It's like June Cleaver dressing up to vacuum. She would do that, because it's all about appearance.
Exactly. And here she is. I gave Annette a tape of songs that I thought Carolyn would listen to before we started rehearsing, and this was on it. And she fell in love with the song, and Alan fell in love with the song, and I've always thought it was just astonishingly mixture of Vegas and Broadway, and I said I wanted her to sing it in the car, and she just leapt on that opportunity. Kind of then difficult to cut it so that it felt like she was singing the whole song without singing the whole song. But we managed to do it at the end. And also the shot of the gun on the car seat, it's quite important. Attempt at a Hitchcockian touch, just to tie it in so that she's not surprised when she reaches in and gets it later. And then this was a shot that worked very well, staying inside the car and seeing it at the same time as Carolyn. Lester's Mustang. Firebird, excuse me. And there's now that actually was unintentional, that Lester hit Carolyn with the car like that, and but it was a nice coincidence. This is a scene that we wrote quite late on, and before we started shooting. Originally, it was a scene. It was a little bit of a repetition of previous scenes.
Yeah, where he just humiliated her one more time.
He basically humiliated her again by pouring beer all over the couch. And we decided, Alan and I, that we wanted to get something that was closer to... We wanted to get a feeling that there was once a good relationship here, and a memory of that relationship. And also,
they're both sort of going through their own transformations, and they're both feeling kind of more empowered and alive.
Exactly. And of course, Carolyn is... I cut that shot of Buddy into the car journey from actually another scene because I wanted to give a sense that she was... give a reason for her good mood, which is I wanted to tell the audience that, yes, the affair was continuing, it just wasn't a one afternoon stand. And so they're both feeling kind of sexy now. He's feeling better about himself. He's more at ease in his own body. Time has passed, and she's feeling good about herself, and she looks great, And they both get turned on by each other for the first time in a long while, because they both have, as Alan says, they're both empowered for the first time in a while. See how Conrad's blown that window behind her, soften the edges of her face. It's beautifully photographed. I didn't actually cover this scene particularly well, I don't think, so I have to jump back for that two shot, which I hate. I like this slow push in, ending with a beer bottle, but I don't like the fact that I have to jump back in order to begin it. I didn't cover it quite properly. We shot this movie in just over 50 days, and given the fact it's a 2-hour movie and it has about 30 minutes cut out of it, we were moving at a hell of a speed. In a scene like this, we shot in very little time, and I didn't quite cover it as well as I would have liked. However, I like the shot because he says it's just stuff, and you see behind him what he's talking about, all the perfect, ineffectual detritus of her suburban home. Look at it all. It's dried flowers and interesting trinkets. Kind of nothing out of place.
But it's
floors.
Also bland, it's just...
I think Naomi did a great job.
I think she did a wonderful job.
The muted colours of the production designer Naomi Shohan. The way she gives those planes there, looking through different colours to give depth to the house. I like this. There he is, trapped in his last frame.
Don't.
Why?
watching myself. I don't like how I look.
Can't believe you don't know how beautiful you are.
Look, I'm not gonna sit here for that shit.
This was a really tough scene to shoot because the obvious reasons that there's a video camera in the scene which kept shooting the crew, and you know, we had to light for in so many different directions and for so many different things. We had to light for film and for video simultaneously, and it was just a lot of it was just pot luck. You know, we covered it. We shot for 2 days in this scene, and in fact, I think I slightly lost my way in the middle of this shooting this. I just tried to get as much as I could because I didn't know how I was going to cut it together. But sometimes that works out best. I mean, if I hadn't shot for that extra half a day, I don't think the scene would have been nearly as good. But I ended up using very few of the shots that we took, you know, and holding a shots for a long time, like this one, which I like very much. I like the fact that he's looking directly at us, but he's not. He's looking at her, and she's there too. So I was playing with these directional, eye lines all the time, and this is I call the 3-shot, which is actually 3 shots of Ricky, and he's looking at us in all of them. No, he's not. He's looking at us in the screen, but he's looking at her in film. It's interesting. Which one do you focus on when you look at this shot?
I focus on the TV.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's looking straight at you.
Yeah.
And that's why I cut to this, because I thought, okay, we're looking at the TV, so now we'll cut inside the TV image, and we'll cut straight to video, and it works. It doesn't jar at all. Whereas normally when you jump in like that, I would say it probably would pop a little bit. And I love the direct address here. I love the fact, and they seem very at ease. I mean, one of the good things about shooting for a long time is that the second day when we came back, they were very much more at ease with themselves and with the scene, because they'd almost done it. They'd already done it from one side, and Thora particularly was much more relaxed, and that helped hugely because this sort of confessional aspect to the scene seems very effortless to me, almost like they're not. That sounds terrible cliche. Almost like they're not acting. I suppose that's the idea. And I like the way the light shifts when you go to video and you get this bluer, flatter image, and then you go to film and it has depth and mystery and shadow and flickering light, and it's really a very tender scene. And of course this scene had a different meaning when we felt that the kids were already convicted of Lester's death. This was the scene that proved to the audience that they were innocent. Here I use it in a different way. I've actually scored the scene in a slightly eerie way in order to give the audience the feeling that by the end of the scene there may still be a possibility that Ricky has killed Lester, because I wanted to keep as many options open to the end, and I wanted to introduce as many MacGuffins, as Hitchcock would say, as possible. And that's why we push in. I use this push in here when he looks up. Again, those eyes and the way they're lit is it's very striking. And this, of course, is the repeated shot from the opening of the movie, but this time it's scored, and this time it's in context, and it's in the context of almost a game. Would you say that they're playing with each other?
Mm-hmm.
They almost seem to be. I mean, she's joking. She's playing kind of idea of a teenage murderess, you know, and then they begin to laugh.
Well, she's joking about, because earlier he was sort of introduced to her as the teenage psycho, and now she knows him so well and is so comfortable that she can sort of make fun of that.
Yes. I like this, that we cut to this image of just the television screen, and they're both in the room, but they're out of shot, and we're staring straight at the TV, and neither of them are looking at that. I don't know why that appeals to me, it just does. And this push into the eye, the zoom in on his camera. We did that second unit, that shot, because I didn't like the way it looked in the first unit. It had some flair on it. We cut it in, and I had him speak this line both from his seat and from on the bed, and it was so much better this way. I mean, the line that she has, which is, I'm not serious.
You know I'm not serious, right?
This is one of my favourite camera moves in the movie. It's the way the camera comes over at the top of them. It's actually quite a difficult move. The camera operated this very well, and becomes this 2-shot This kind of horizontal two-shot in light and shadow, and fades to black. And then we crash in with the Seeker, the great Pete Townsend, who I know from London Theatre, gave us this song for next to nothing, and so thank you to Pete, because I think it describes absolutely where Lester thinks he is in his life at this point. Here's a homage. This is a homage to Marathon Man, starting on the road and then finding the feet coming into the top of the shot, panning up the body. So that's a Schlesinger homage, but Conrad Hall also shot Marathon Man, so he was aware of that. And I like how he runs out of frame here. And then we cut to subliminal. We think this is going to be Lester, and in actual fact it's not. It's Jane. And this is kind of an important scene. We touch back in on the Lester Jane story here, which has stopped for a while. And this is the kind of resurgence of Angela as a character. He's going to see her again tonight.
Okay if Angela sleeps over tonight.
I love the fact he's whistling at the beginning of the scene. He's whistling the Seeker. Always seems a very neat segue. And amazingly, we shot this scene at night, and Conrad blew those windows out behind Jane there. But I love her still presence in the foreground.
I'm too embarrassed to bring her over.
This is a difficult scene because
Because of you.
I didn't want to soften Lester in this scene. I wanted him to still have that streak of cruelty, anger, particularly because he senses he's going to be found out by Jane here. And I didn't want to soften that. We had a big debate about that on set. I think one of the reasons why it works is you sense his regret here. And here's another of a series of images of characters caught in the mirror.
You ready to go?
I love the fact that he's being spied upon by his father, and he senses him over his shoulder. I took like 4 or 5 shots in this scene, and I ended up again telling the story with just the one. And here again, the Colonel in the shadows, the rest of them in the light. Conrad wet down the streets. He's a big one for darkening the surface of the streets, which is great, but time-consuming. Not a great thing when the studio comes to visit. And I shouldn't really have panned to the right on this shot. I should have just done all the storytelling with the rack of focus. Again, this sequence, we always try to shoot the Colonel in shadows, particularly in the last third of the movie. And I love the fact that in the earlier shot when he's looking at Lester is in the sunlight and he's in the dark. And that's fairly consistent, even in this scene. Apart from when he sits on the bed to look at the video and he's exposed, as it were. I love this. This is Alan's idea that he calls up a video of his wife and is totally uninterested in him, turns it off immediately. She's sitting there doing nothing except staring at a glass of water like a Whistler painting. And then he finds this, which is obviously disturbing to him. A shot of Lester working out, and the mixed feelings, which we don't yet understand. This was a dodgy little transition, which I wish I got a wide shot of Lester working in the kitchen. We got this literally at the last minute in the kitchen of a Kmart supermarket, and it was tiny, and we put that voice box on the wall, and that's when we ran out of money, really. I wanted people running around and screaming about, and we weren't able to do it. I wanted to see Lester at ease in the madness of this, of his new job, but somehow happy and released in the anarchy of it all. And here's the revelation. We actually changed this. We shot this, all the stuff in Smileys, on the first 2 days, or first day, in fact, and scrapped it all because it was terrible. I shot it. It was badly shot, badly designed, badly acted. It was just, I went horribly wrong in the first couple of days, and studio were good enough to let me reshoot this sequence, and we then turned it into a drive-through. Up to that point, they'd actually walked into the burger joint. I loved, again, this trap behind windows, these kind of people talking to each other within frames. And then Alan added that great line in for the counter girl. He says, "You are so busted," which is a fortuitous last-minute piece of excellent writing. Alan was there every day on set, and you know, you can tell from this DVD, when he couldn't get a word in, he was kind of useful. But most of the time,
usually I was just sitting over in a corner giggling.
Exactly. I found I cut a lot of the last lines and the first lines out of scenes in this movie to jump the audience, to stay one step ahead of the audience, and to stay create a kind of rhythm of right turns, sharp right turns, and left turns, which I felt were important to a kind of.
But you also, like several of those scenes, the perfect ending line was not the last line that was written.
No,
and you sort of figured that out.
Well, it was like I'm just an ordinary guy with nothing to lose is the perfect
exactly,
but it wasn't the last line of the scene. And there was another one there where Lester smiled.
It was some gratuitous.
Shouted. Well, he shouted "Smiley" at Mr. Smiley's after the departing car.
Right.
But just saying, you can't tell me what you'll be able to tell me what to do ever again was the perfect line. Here's Annette alone in the car, and I like that this shot tells the entire story that you see through the window him getting into his Jag. His R.E. King Jag. And then you see this reprise of her talking to herself, but this time it's even more lonely and desperate in the darkening car lot. This is one of the few pieces of machinery I used. I wanted a crane here, and I wanted the sense of the world spinning out on its axis here. Just it's all going to go wrong from here. Something strange is going to happen. And we use Free on the soundtrack, and then this shot of this sister shot to Lester's earlier one where he's comparing his muscles, and now they're pretty big. Kevin really worked out on this picture. He was on a diet, and he changed his body shape, and that chest and arm, those chest and arms, they're a different shape to the ones that he started shooting with. Again, another sharp transition from the noise and the rock music inside the garage to the beeper going off inside the dining room. It's something I really like. I like the fact that early in this sequence, the whole third act, that he says this is the last day of my life. I think that was one of the most skillful pieces of writing. It gives a kind of tension. Well, it gives an extreme tension to the third act, but very effortlessly, and it doesn't seem it doesn't seem cheap because it's so well expressed, and also Kevin's voiceover is so well acted, I think. And this is the return of Angela after her absence in the movie, trying to extricate the details from Jane about Ricky. And one of the interesting things about this scene is, of course, it's a very interesting scene when you realise who Angela really is. By the end of the movie, you then go back and watch the film, and you realise what she's doing there is finding out details about Jane that she has no knowledge of herself. So there's a strange tension in that scene that we wanted to try and capture, something weird about her asking incessantly and going on about it, something not quite right. We did a little bit of rewriting on that scene, and Alan started it very awkwardly, which I liked. And here we are, the window motif coming to its climax here. We've set up the fact that there's that gap between the windows. We've set up the Colonel's watching Ricky, his suspicion of Lester, and this is the end result of that. He gets 100% the wrong end of the stick. But this, I always knew this was really crucial for this, that this should work, and so we designed those windows specifically for this to be the case. And again, if you look in the background of this shot, you see the Colonel in the window, and this is what he's seeing, which of course is not what's really happening. First of a series of misapprehensions, and then when he looks back, of course, Ricky and Lester running away because they don't want to get caught by Lester's daughter smoking pot. Colonel thinks it's something completely different. We actually had a scene in the this is again Conrad, brilliant the way he
I love this
he
shot.
goes into the shadows, and then his silhouette appears at the end of that shot. Bang, look at that. That's again great cinematography. Difficult little scene. I had to cut some pace into the scene. Rhythmically, it was very. There was a scene that preceded this. The girls coming through the door and arguing, and I didn't feel it was necessary. And I also chopped some lines out of this scene to try and keep the momentum of this last sequence going, because I didn't want to lose sight of Ricky and the Colonel, because the Colonel drives in some dark way this whole last part of the movie, the Colonel and Carolyn, and we couldn't stay away from the two of them for too long.
I should probably go see what Jane's up to.
I like this shot of him puzzled and slightly miffed by the whole thing. She's not going for it. Here's a...
Where did you get that?
That's the only time I use a swish pan. in the movie, and again, great piece of lighting. And I said to Conrad, I want you to keep him in the dark until he comes face to face with him, and Ricky too. And he came up with this, which is fantastic. I remember Chris Cooper also saying, how do you want me to start this scene? And I said to him, I want you to sit in the corner of the room and wait for him. And he was very relieved that he wasn't going to be standing there in a confrontational pose immediately. But the way that the light flashes in his eyes in these scenes is exceptional. There was a description in the script which is Ricky finally realising how to defeat his father at this point, which I worked very hard to try and achieve. And this exhalation of breath from Wes, this moment of understanding there, is a turning point. I wanted to make sure that landed. And then he turns and he stands up and he understands how to defeat his father for the first time. And it's a fantastic piece of acting on both their parts. When we shot these scenes between Ricky and the Colonel, it was by far the most intense period of shooting emotionally. The crew were very, very quiet. You can always tell when you kind of know something dark is going on. They all shut up, and it was a very strange and upsetting atmosphere on set those days. This breakdown that Chris has here was entirely from him. Really upsetting piece of acting, I think. Such desperation and loss. And speaking of inarticulacy, this is another incredibly eloquent yet inarticulate scene, particularly on Barbara's behalf. The way Barbara looks at Ricky in this scene is filled with emotion and loss and unspoken bond between the two of them. I think really she's absolutely exceptional actress, and he is astonishing too. I like this push in here. I wanted to keep some strange tension in the scene. I didn't want it to release. I didn't want it to be a kind of
because her heart's breaking, right?
Yeah,
there. Yeah.
I wanted that. It's kind of like what Hitchcock said: shoot your love scenes like murders. And I wanted that. This is a love scene, really, and I wanted that tension in it. This actually was a second unit shot, amazingly. Conrad Hall's son, who's also called Conrad Hall, did this without me asking him to do it, and showed it to me, and I said, I love it, it's fantastic, it's much better than what I would have done. So I put it in the movie, and it's actually the first of a sequence of push-ins on the windows, the rainy windows. There's another one coming up, and then there's one in the garage afterwards. Here's another one. That's Carolyn finding her gun, and now it's Jane and Angela arguing about sex. This is really all Angela has on Jane now is the power she has over her dad. She's losing her grip on Jane, and she can feel it. And I wanted these two still, they're both dressed in black, still certain people on one side of the room, and this little flailing person dressed in white on the other side of the room with her hair all a mess and desperately trying to persuade her. I think this is, I'm pleased with how this worked out. She really is just kind of, she's losing her grip on Jane, and she can feel it. And you can see it from her body language. Look, when she stands up off the bed there, she's off balance. I used that. I love that. She's not really standing up properly. I actually chose that take because she was not centred, and she's not centred here either. Thora does this great. We did this. Is another classic example of when I let the camera roll and asked her to do this speech 3 or 4 times back to back, and she lost self-consciousness with it, and it just all came flooding out. And I love the rational tone that Wes uses here. Absolutely rational, observational tone. It's not emotional at all. He's not. He just. It's a fact. He's presenting her with a fact, which is why it's so upsetting to her. I had to leave this. I wanted to leave this embrace, this last embrace, for a while, because gave us time. It's Angela time to be sitting on the steps. Again, a shot I like very much is the rain and seeing her through the banisters and in another little prison. And here's the final push in on a window. beginning of the scene between Colonel and Lester, which was great in script form, but I can honestly say, and I think probably Alan as well, Chris and Lester and Kevin turned it into something quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
The night we shot this was I'll never
It was like
forget.
3 in the morning.
It
and
was.
Kevin had the flu or something.
It really was. It was. We shot till 6, and we shot till the light came up. It was like 3 or 4 days before we finished. And I never forget the look on Kevin's face the first time Chris did a take. It was pretty much as good as it is in the movie, and it was in a wide shot.
I love this shot because that car reflected reminds me of the shot of Kevin at the end.
Yes, you say that about the red reminding you of the blood. I mean, there is a kind of consistent theme. It's meant to end up, the roses end up with Kevin's face in the red blood at the end, and the red car and the red door and the red lamp in the garage. We chose those very carefully. Even the little things like the red file behind Lester's head in the moment when he says "fuck off" to Brad, and the red tea towel in the Fitz kitchen. These are all design things. I think Naomi's done a great job. I love that, the pop poster behind him there. This is now Lester's den. We tell the story of Lester's kind of growth through this, the way that his space has changed. And there's something that the rain does to Chris here. It almost melts him. He has this sad clown's face when it drops, the authority of the Colonel, and his hair gets wet. There's something so melancholy about him, and it's almost like he's dissolving in front of him. I think Kevin plays this scene so impeccably as well. He hands Chris. He doesn't compete with him in any way. He's so gentle with him. He's so understanding. He has such humanity, and he treads this very fine line that he must tread because the Colonel must feel in some way that he's coming onto him, or he's allowing himself to be kissed. And he does that with it's impeccable, really. And it comes from respect, I think, of one actor for another. I mean, I never forget Kevin's face when we shot the first wide shot of the scene, and he walked past my chair, and the look of, oh my God, Chris Cooper is going to be amazing in this movie, passed it across his face. I'm going to have to be good to keep up with him in this scene. And even that, he doesn't push him away from him with outrage or disgust. He just says, you've got the wrong idea,
But there's such kindness still there.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's very gentle. And Chris wouldn't look him in the face. I said, please look him in the eyes. Look at that. How could he not want to do that?
Yeah, that look.
The pain in this face there is so extraordinary. I find that moving every time I see it. And the way he walks through the red light, the way he walks through the warmth and into the cold. That's, again, Conrad's homage to Storaro, I think. And this is one of my favourite shots of the movie. I said, can you make him disappear? And watch what he did. He lets him walk and walk and walk, and then he disappears. That's great lighting. This is the voice of Chris Doridus on the motivational tape, who was our music supervisor and also a fine disc jockey. We actually recorded it a couple of times. I had to get him to do it faster and faster. I wanted the sort of tension in the voice to communicate itself. And then this is the final part, as it were, of Lester's journey. I wanted to get a kind of sense that this was the end of a mythical quest on his behalf, and that's why I like this. This again, it's a slow push in, but then we watch him. We don't push in with him down the barrel of that corridor. He just walks away from us to meet his fate. And I like that. It has a kind of... it's about as epic as you can get in a small house in Brentwood. Mm-hmm. And I kept it wide here, and I wanted that sense of that little hunted animal in the corner of the room in the shadows. Again, beautifully lit by Conrad and the red roses. I wanted to keep them at a distance and let us get closer to them as they get closer to each other. And also to be doubtful at the beginning whether they're going to get together or not, I wanted to keep attention in the scene. Very specific when I've used close-ups. I think generally, along with Steadicam, I think close-ups are wildly overused, particularly in movies. And one of the pieces of advice that Spielberg gave when we were starting the movie was stick a row, the front row of the cinema along the base of the monitor screen, just to remind yourself that you're shooting on a 40-foot screen and not a TV screen. And I didn't do it, but I kept it in my mind the whole time. So we cut to mid-shots halfway through the conversation, and then we have this storyboarded shot, which is a push in against the window. And although I storyboarded the shot, Conrad lit it so beautifully in silhouette, and then watch the way that the camera floats above the red roses. You know, you think the red roses are going to end up in shot, and those red roses are such a symbol of Carolyn in this scene, such a symbol of his other life. You know, Conrad lets a little bit of light touch them. It's so painterly, and then we keep pushing in, and they're talking, and you know, we lose the roses, and just have them. I think that's so. And again, it's tension. It's all about tension. And when we pass the roses, we cut to close-ups, but still not too close. I didn't want to force emotion to the audience's face. I was aware I was treading a very thin line here. It could be very seedy, you know, if one wasn't careful. Kevin played it with such kind of honesty, and it was so straight. And she was so vulnerable, and he was so gentle with her. It made a great. It doesn't need intense close-ups, and I wanted to.
Yeah, there's a kindness to him that's so not lascivious. That I think redeems.
Yeah, he is. I mean, it's, you know, and you are going through mixed emotions in this scene. You're thinking, well, he can't do this. This is disgraceful, you know. And I remember thinking that when I was reading the script. On the other hand, he's saying what he means, and he's saying what he feels, and he's not abusing her, and she's perfectly at liberty to say no. But at the same time, you want to lead the audience into believing that they're going to sleep, and so you want to lead the audience into believing that they're going to sleep together.
I remember
in order that when they don't, you know, it makes an impact.
Right. The first test screening I went to, there was a lot of shifting in the
seats. Yeah. They thought
scene.
This shot here is when they thought, oh my God, he's going to sleep with her, or he is sleeping with her now. And that's what I wanted. I wanted them to think that. They have to think that. They have to be fighting with themselves. Do I like Lester enough to let him do this, or what do I feel? You know. I think I would have shot it totally differently. I don't think I would have shot it if he'd actually done it, but I think if he had, it would have been a totally different, because you're leading them onto a punch that then isn't there. Tariq Anwar, the editor, cut this, said, let me have a go at this sequence, and cut it himself, and I thought it was beautiful. I never touched it. I wanted to use just one shot there, and he said, no, let me jump cut, which seemed so much the conclusion of the cuts of the hand, you know, in his fantasies. It was so skillful. And this is another shot. I love the way she has her hand up there in the light, and the rain playing on the pillows, and then cutting to this other vulnerable figure. And again, an expression of nudity as extreme vulnerability, and suddenly you see that this woman who you thought was knowing is actually an innocent child, you know. And then she reveals herself to him as a virgin, and this is a big turning point for Lester. And in these moments, he becomes a father again. And we debated these moments very carefully in script meetings and in rehearsals. This turning point. He actually had a line here again, which I cut out. I thought his look said everything. He's just, you can see what he's thinking, and he just wants to give her a hug. And which is what he does. He wraps her up, and he becomes a father again. And in a way, it's by far the most satisfying end to his journey that there could possibly have been. And a very moving one. Here he is, very, very gentle. And suddenly, I love the way how tiny she looks when he wraps that thing around her, you know, and he embraces her. She looks so small. And again, I mean, I'm not sure how conscious it was, Alan, when you wrote it. I suspect it was pretty conscious, because most of the time you were so on the nail. But that this feeling of being paternal towards her led to his questioning about his own daughter in the next scene. Mm-hmm. That actually it kind of opened the door into asking how Jane was. And this is a shot that I like. We shot this on a high-speed camera, so the rain fell slowly, and I love the sound of the window coming down and the red door. The end of Carolyn's journey, which is I'm trying to make the audience think that it was Carolyn who was going to kill Lester, obviously. Again, I jump back to mid-shots here. I didn't want to thrust the audience into the middle of the scene. I wanted it to begin again. This beautiful theme that hangs over this scene from Tom Newman, which is a reprise from the beginning of the movie, the first video cue. So full of longing, and Kevin is immaculate in this scene. I mean, when he hears that Jane is in love here, the way he computes that she's in love with Ricky, and how happy that makes him that he knows both of them. And, here, this look he gives, that's exquisite film acting, I think. It's so minuscule, but
there's so much in it.
So much in it, and you know exactly what he's thinking, man. And all he says in the script is good for her, you know? But look what he makes of it. And again, here, he says, oh, I'm okay, but then he thinks about it, That's the first time I've actually thought about whether I'm good or not in a long time. Again, watch his eyes, his eyes in this scene, the way he buried emotion in this man that had been buried by needs and desires and short-term gain, and now suddenly he's thinking about his life, and it's a genuine epiphany, it's a genuine moment of realisation, and it's always struck me as one of the most breathtaking pieces of writing, that in this moment that he understands everything, he dies, That to me is what makes it a genuinely moving story, that you can feel ambivalent towards this character, because he's genuinely an anti-hero up to this point, but yet you can know exactly what he's going through here and feel deep compassion for him, and I think most people don't want him to die at the end. I would like to think that anyway.
Yeah.
And this was this was heavily storyboarded, the walk across in wide shot and then cut back to, I didn't want them to see the photograph until now.
I loved this moment of his performance.
Yeah. Lit with reflected light from the photo. And then this which took a long time to shoot, to get the speed of the track right, the pan right, and the blood and all that sort of stuff. But I wanted a piece of his death. And there's the red, like the red roses, and a tie up to the colour theme. Here's a Steadicam shot, just went by. And that's my appearance, that's my hand. That's my only appearance in the movie. And again, I wanted to delay the moment of seeing the face. I wanted Jane to see it, and then I wanted Ricky to see it, and then I wanted us to see it. And this, of course, is the culmination of the theme of the movie, if you like, which is that beauty is found in places you least expect it, and sometimes in death. And here it is again. Conrad excelled himself, the reflection of Kevin's face in the blood, and the way the blood is both red and black, and the way he looks back at the camera.
I remember the day you guys shot this. I thought, it's like a painting.
It's really Kevin had to stand like that, lie like that for a long time, and he found it quite disturbing too. And if you look carefully at this shot, there's a tear rolling down his nose, which you can only see on film. And then this fade to his final voiceover, which I think is almost the best piece of writing in the movie. And there was originally a much, much longer final sequence. One of the reasons that I took it out was that his final voiceover seemed to carry the message of the film so eloquently. I didn't want to look at or hear much else, really. But I did love this notion of replaying the same moment over and over again in the house, the kids hearing the shot and Angela hearing the shot. And it's very deliberately interspersed with his memories, which we shot in black and white. And we tracked left to right at exactly the same speed, and Carl, our dolly grip, was very, very good at tracking the same speed across close-ups and wide shots. If you think how difficult that is, it's very difficult. And here's Carolyn with a gunshot in the background, but not hearing it as she arrives at the house. And here's his memory of the car. Again, I wanted it close. Did it with second unit, I had to do it again. And here is our revelation of the murderer. Again, done with one shot, as quickly as possible, as brief as possible. And then this shot of Jane, and this exquisite shot of little Erin, who was our UPM's daughter, dressed up as a fairy. It's so beautiful. I think most parents can acknowledge them. They have those memories of those moments when a child's life is so suspended in time. And then this scene was, in all honesty, Annette's idea. We wanted a moment when Carolyn thawed in the movie, and I kept the shot wide. I didn't want to drive the emotion down the audience's throat. I wanted it to almost pathetic wail of loss. And there's Lester's memory of her, and this was as written. We in the script was always cut back to the plastic bag here, image of beauty that hangs over the film. And at this point, Lester is finally in tune with Ricky. One of the wonderful things about the movie that the young are so pure and so old in their thought, and the old only find that out at the end of the movie. They just think like young people again. And then this final voiceover in which Lester describes his stupid little life, which he genuinely understands how small his life was and yet how much he misses it. A great piece of writing, I think. And the cut to black at the end was a final attempt to keep the audience on the wrong foot. And then this wonderful version of Because by Elliott Smith, which is, I think, one of the great Lennon-McCartney songs, and it seemed so in tune with the theme of the movie and the way that we were feeling at the end. And I wanted him to record it a cappella, which he did. There is a great Lennon-McCartney a cappella recording as well on the Beatles outtakes, but this one I think is really beautiful. And end credits, which I much prefer personally. I don't like sitting for the first 5 minutes of the movie watching people's names come up. I much prefer it at the end when I can concentrate. And, well, if you've got this far, I'm glad, because it means we weren't too boring. So
this was great fun for me because I got to hear a lot of your thoughts that I never knew before, and they make such perfect sense, and they inform the script for me.
It's interesting. I learnt a lot by listening to other people's DVD commentaries. I mean, I'm a particular fan of Paul Thomas Anderson, Boogie Nights one. She sounds like he's had a couple of drinks. And Steven Soderbergh doing Sex Lies videotape with Neil LaBute was also kind of great. And I hope that other directors will watch these DVDs and learn from them and go off and make their movies and do their commentaries. So, thank you for listening.